First-class encounter. The attendant's voice cut through the cabin like ice. Sir, for the last time, move to the economy section or I'll call security. His tone was sharp with contempt. His eyes narrowed at me. I looked up from my laptop, keeping my voice steady despite the humiliation burning in my chest. I've already told you, I'm not moving. Around me, 50 pairs of eyes watched the confrontation unfold. No one expected what would happen next when the man they assumed was powerless stood his ground and revealed who he really was. My name is Marcus Chen, and this was supposed to be a routine flight from San Francisco to New York. The gleaming Boeing 787 Dreamliner waited on the tarmac, its sleek design promising a comfortable journey across the continent. Inside, first class was the epitome of luxury. Wide leather seats, personal entertainment systems, and attentive service that made passengers feel like royalty. I settled into seat 3A, dressed in worn jeans and a simple black hoodie. My backpack, weathered from years of travel, slid easily under the seat in front of me. I'd been coding for hours, focused on fixing a crucial bug before my meeting tomorrow. Bradley, the first-class attendant, moved through the cabin with practiced precision. His tailored uniform matched his perfectly styled hair and sharp features. To some passengers, his smile was warm and inviting. To others, like me, it never reached his eyes. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Donovan," he practically sang to the elderly woman across the aisle. "Can I get you anything before takeoff?" She declined with a polite smile, already absorbed in her knitting. When Bradley passed my seat, his demeanor shifted instantly. His eyes flicked to my casual attire and worn backpack, and his lips pressed into a thin line. He moved on without a word. I noticed, of course. I always notice. But I said nothing, continuing to type lines of code, hoping to finish before takeoff. "Excuse me, sir." Bradley's voice startled me from my work 15 minutes later. His tone was technically polite, but glacial. "I believe you're in the wrong section." I glanced up, meeting his gaze calmly. "No, this is my seat." His smile tightened. "I don't think so. First class is reserved for our premium passengers." Nearby passengers began to take notice. A businessman in an expensive suit glanced over with a frown. A woman with perfectly coiffed hair leaned slightly to get a better view, her curiosity evident. "You might want to check your passenger list before making assumptions," I suggested quietly. Bradley's eyebrows arched, his irritation barely concealed. "I don't need to check anything. I know who belongs here." The tension in the cabin thickened. Some passengers exchanged glances and whispers. I heard a woman mutter, "Why doesn't he just move if he's in the wrong seat?" Someone else replied, "Probably trying to get a free upgrade." Bradley crossed his arms, standing his ground. "If you don't move to economy immediately," he said, voice raised for everyone to hear, "I'll have to call security." I tilted my head slightly, maintaining my composure. "Call whoever you need to. I'm not moving." The woman with the perfect hair gasped softly. The businessman leaned forward, his brow furrowed as the confrontation escalated. Bradley turned to his colleague, a younger flight attendant named Jessica. "Get security," he snapped. Jessica hesitated, glancing between us. She seemed uncomfortable with the situation but nodded reluctantly and moved toward the front of the plane. I shifted slightly in my seat, still calm. "You might want to think carefully about what you're doing," I said softly. Bradley scoffed. "I know exactly what I'm doing. Now get up." I remained seated, my gaze steady. "You shouldn't make assumptions about people based on how they look." His smirk widened. "And you shouldn't be in seats you didn't pay for." I picked up my phone, typed something quickly, then set it down on the armrest. "You're making a mistake," I said simply. Bradley's irritation grew as I remained seated. His face reddened, his breathing quickened. "I'm going to ask you one last time," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Move to economy or I will call security." "I've already told you. I'm not moving," I repeated, my voice even and controlled. The woman with perfect hair whispered loudly to her companion. "Looks like he's trying to scam a free upgrade." Bradley seized on the comment. "That's exactly what it looks like. he said, folding his arms and addressing the other passengers. We have rules for a reason. Some people just don't respect them. I didn't respond to the insults or the growing murmurs. Instead, I kept my gaze steady on Bradley, my composure a quiet defiance that seemed to infuriate him further. Jessica returned, looking uncomfortable. She glanced at the passenger list in her hands, but before she could speak, Bradley cut her off. I've got this under control, he snapped. You don't need to get involved. The businessman across the aisle leaned forward. Excuse me, he said gently, addressing me. Is everything all right? I turned to him with a grateful smile. I'm fine, thank you. Bradley immediately interjected. Sir, please don't encourage this disturbance. The businessman frowned. From where I'm sitting, you're the one causing a scene. Bradley's face flushed with anger as he turned back to me. I've had enough of this. Either you move, or I'll make sure you're escorted off this plane. I met his gaze unflinchingly. You can try. His frustration boiled over, his voice shaking as he leaned closer. Why don't you just admit you're in the wrong seat and stop wasting everyone's time? I remained silent, which only fueled his anger. Minutes later, still fuming, Bradley moved down the aisle with a tray of water. He served other passengers first, deliberately ignoring me despite my polite request for a drink. I'll get to you when I can, he said curtly, walking past without another glance. When he returned later, I had shifted slightly in my seat, stretching one leg into the aisle. Bradley saw this and deliberately changed his path. In an instant, his foot struck my leg, the tray tilted, and glasses of water tumbled forward, splashing onto my lap and the floor. Watch where you're putting your legs, he exclaimed theatrically. You've caused a mess. Passengers turned their heads, startled by the commotion. I looked up, surprised but composed, brushing water from my jeans. You walked into my leg, I stated calmly. Bradley stepped closer, his face red with anger. You think you can talk to me like that? He hissed. Then, in a shocking moment that silenced the entire cabin, Bradley reached out and shoved my shoulder hard. The cabin froze. Gasps rippled through the passengers. The businessman stood halfway, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. Jessica's hands flew to her mouth in horror. I slowly straightened, my expression unchanged but my eyes carrying a weight that made Bradley hesitate for the first time. You just made the worst mistake of your career, I said quietly. Before Bradley could respond, the cockpit door opened and the captain emerged, his face tense and his movements purposeful. He scanned the cabin briefly before walking directly toward us. Bradley turned to him, suddenly uncertain. What's going on? The captain's posture was rigid as he replied, Step aside, Bradley. Now. Bradley frowned, confused. Why would I need to step aside? I'm handling this. The captain glanced at me, then back to Bradley. I just received a call from corporate. This gentleman here is Marcus Chen, the new CEO of Skyline Airlines. The cabin erupted into gasps and murmurs. The woman with perfect hair audibly inhaled, her eyes widening as she looked between us. He owns the airline? She whispered in disbelief. The businessman nodded knowingly, as though he'd suspected all along. Jessica, standing nearby, looked relieved as the realization hit her. Bradley stared at the captain, his face draining of color. That can't be true, he stammered. There must be some mistake. The tension was palpable as the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be making an unscheduled stop. Please remain seated and prepare for descent. Passengers murmured in confusion. The businessman leaned toward me. What's happening? Why are we landing? I didn't answer, my expression serene but unreadable. When we touched down, a black SUV pulled up directly to the plane. Two sharply dressed executives exited the vehicle and boarded quickly. Mr. Chen, one of them said warmly, everything is ready for your review. Bradley froze, his face pale as the realization fully hit him. I stood slowly, adjusting my hoodie. I'm Marcus Chen, I announced, my voice steady and commanding. As of last week, I'm the new CEO of Skyline Airlines. Bradley's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I turned to face him directly. Bradley, your behavior today has been disgraceful. You've humiliated yourself, mistreated a passenger, and tarnished the reputation of this airline. He stammered. I didn't know. I held up my hand, silencing him. You didn't know because you didn't bother to treat me with the basic respect that every passenger deserves. Instead, you made assumptions based on how I looked and what I was wearing. The passengers nodded in agreement, their earlier silence giving way to murmurs of support. There's no mistake in what happened here, I continued, my voice quiet yet authoritative. Your job is to treat every passenger with respect, no matter who they are or what you assume about them. And now there are consequences. I turned to the captain. I want this addressed immediately. Bradley took a step back, panic evident in his eyes. Before he could move further, the captain blocked his path. You're not going anywhere. I faced Bradley again, my expression firm. Effective immediately, you are terminated from Skyline Airlines. His face crumpled. Please, Mr. Chen, he whispered, his voice breaking. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught, I interrupted coldly. But you did, and now you'll face the consequences. 2 airport security officers boarded the plane, causing whispers among the passengers. Mr. Chen, one officer said respectfully, we received your report. How would you like to proceed? I nodded firmly. This individual assaulted a passenger, in front of multiple witnesses. I want him escorted off this aircraft immediately and banned from future employment with any airline in our alliance. Bradley gasped, taking a step back. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. The security officers moved forward. Sir, you need to come with us. Passengers watched in stunned silence as Bradley was escorted down the aisle, his earlier arrogance replaced by desperation and humiliation. I turned back to the cabin, addressing the passengers. To everyone here, I apologize for what you had to witness today. This is not the standard of service I expect on Skyline Airlines. Moving forward, we will ensure that every passenger is treated with dignity and respect. The cabin erupted into applause. I turned to Jessica, the young flight attendant who had tried to check the passenger list. Jessica, I noticed your professionalism today. Thank you for trying to do the right thing when it mattered. I'd like you to consider taking on a senior training role at our corporate headquarters. Her eyes widened. Thank you, Mr. Chen, she said softly, her face lighting up with gratitude. As I prepared to leave the plane, a passenger called out, Mr. Chen, you're amazing. I turned with a gentle smile. Remember this moment. It's always worth standing up for what's right, especially when, others misjudge you. Later, in a televised interview that went viral across social media, I sat composed and thoughtful as the interviewer asked about the incident. Mr. Chen, your story has resonated with millions. What message do you want to send? My response was clear and resolute. Respect is not conditional on appearance, status, or assumptions. True leadership means creating environments where everyone is treated with dignity. The real measure of a company isn't its bottom line, but how it treats people, all people, when no one's watching. Months later, I boarded another Skyline flight. The atmosphere had transformed completely, warm, welcoming, and genuinely respectful toward every passenger. As the plane climbed into the clouds, I gazed out the window with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The incident had become more than a viral moment or a cautionary tale. It had sparked a transformation across our entire industry, reminding everyone that sometimes the most powerful changes begin with a simple act of standing your ground. As we soared higher into the endless sky, I smiled to myself. This wasn't just about confronting prejudice or asserting authority. It was about creating a future where respect and kindness were the standard, not the exception. The end.